You have been living with a name, a face, and a story that you've called yourself. You wake up every day and put on this mask without knowing it. But what if I told you that this you, this voice in your head, this construct of memories and desires, is not real? At least not in the way you think. According to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, the self is an illusion, a well-crafted fiction designed to keep you from confronting the chaos beneath. You are not one, you are many. Freud didn't see the mind as a monolith, but as a battlefield, a psychic arena torn between primal desires, moral codes, and something fragile in between. You are not a single identity, you are a war zone. At the top of this fragile hierarchy stands what you call the I, or ego. The ego is the part of you that says, I want this, I believe in that, I am a good person. It's the voice that narrates your life and claims authorship over every action you take. But here's the twist. The ego is a puppet, a mask, a surface actor pretending to run the show while deeper, more ancient forces pull the strings. Below the surface lurks the id, a dark, impulsive core of instinct, hunger, lust, rage, and raw survival. It does not know words. It does not understand morality. It only wants. It screams like an animal in the basement of your mind, always demanding more pleasure, more satisfaction, more now. On the other side, standing guard, like a strict parent or disapproving God, is the superego. It is the voice of culture, religion, school, family, all the authorities that ever told you who you should be. The superego judges, criticizes, shames. It demands perfection. It hates your desires. It fights your impulses. It punishes you with guilt. The ego is not your true self. It is the diplomat caught between these two extremes, trying to make peace, trying to survive the war. And you, the so-called you, are merely the story that ego tells to keep from going insane. This is the first layer of Freud's illusion, the myth of a unified self. What you call I is just the narrator of a fragmented consciousness, a negotiator, a coping mechanism, and yet we build our entire lives, our decisions, our dreams, and our morality on this illusion. So ask yourself, if you are not the one making decisions, not the one wanting or refusing, if you are just the middleman in a psychic tug of war, then who are you really? That question is not new, but Freud gave it teeth. And once you taste that truth, once you feel the fracture within, you can never go back. The illusion of you is comforting, but beneath it lies something far more honest and terrifying. Imagine a puppet that believes it moves on its own. It raises its hand and says, I chose to do this. It spins, dances, falls, and believes each action is the result of its will. But what it doesn't see are the strings above and the hands pulling them. Freud believed you are that puppet, and the strings, they are your unconscious. This is the second layer of Freud's illusion, the myth of conscious control. You think you know what you want. You think your choices are rational, deliberate. But according to Freud, most of what drives you, your desires, fears, fantasies, obsessions, lives beneath awareness, hidden in the shadowy depths of the unconscious mind. The unconscious is not just a place where you store forgotten memories. It is alive, active. It dreams when you sleep. It leaks into your speech when you stutter or forget a name. It guides your patterns in love and conflict, repeating the same emotional wounds over and over until you notice or don't. Freud believed the unconscious was not silent. It speaks through symbols, through slips of the tongue, through symptoms and habits that make no rational sense. Every irrational fear, every unexplained obsession, every recurring dream, these are the fingerprints of the unconscious. The ego, your conscious mind, is like a tiny flashlight in a vast dark cave. It sees only what's in front of it. But the unconscious, that is the cave. And most of your decisions, who you trust, who you fall in love with, what makes you angry, what you avoid, are shaped not by logic but by forces hidden in that darkness. Freud's famous metaphor compared the mind to an iceberg. The tip above water is the conscious mind, the small part you know, but beneath that surface is a massive structure, invisible and submerged, the unconscious, and that part is bigger, stronger, and far more influential. So when you say, I know myself, what do you mean? You know the stories you've told, the mask you wear, the thoughts that happen to reach the surface. But what about the forces you cannot name? The childhood wounds you've buried, the traumas you forgot but still live in your body, the truths you deny even to yourself? Freud dared to ask, what if we are not self-aware creatures, but machines running on hidden programming? What if we are haunted not by ghosts, but by our own suppressed truths? And that is the true discomfort of Freud's legacy. He ripped the mask off the modern mind and forced us to look at what lies beneath. Not angels and reason, but animals and instinct. Not perfect selves, but fractured psyches struggling to pretend otherwise. In this vision, you are not a single soul making free choices. You are the surface expression of something much older, deeper, and far less polite. You are a symptom of your unconscious, and the self you think you are is just its most acceptable face. So again we ask, if you are not what you believe, not what you see, then who or what are you? You weren't born with a self, you became one, and that process didn't start with freedom. It started with fear. It started in childhood, where Freud believed the roots of your mind were planted, shaped, and wounded long before you had the words to understand. This is the third layer of the illusion, the myth of original selfhood. Freud taught that what you call yourself is not born. It is built, often from broken pieces. Childhood is where the unconscious begins its silent work. Every fear you felt but couldn't name, every punishment you received without understanding, every desire you were taught to suppress, all of that was absorbed. It didn't disappear, it sank. In those early years, you were not just learning language, you were learning how to survive love. You learned that some parts of you were welcome, others were dangerous. Cry too loud, get ignored, want too much, get scolded, ask too many questions, get silenced. So you adapted, you split. The parts of you that were acceptable, you kept and called me. The others, you buried them, pushed them into the unconscious. They became shame, rage, guilt, the shadow self. Freud believed that no part of the self ever really disappears. The child you were still lives inside you, angry, frightened, confused, but now it speaks in code. You hear it in anxiety. You see it in patterns you can't break. You feel it when a small trigger causes a massive reaction. That is not your adult self speaking. That is the past, alive in the present. The family is the first mirror. It tells the child what to be, how to feel, who is lovable. And this is where Freud introduced one of his most controversial ideas, the Oedipus complex, a strange drama that plays out in the child's mind, a mixture of love, rivalry, and forbidden desire. The child desires closeness with one parent and sees the other as competition. It's not about literal romance, it's about emotional confusion, boundaries blurred, power misunderstood. It is in this confusion that the superego is born, the internalized voice of authority. The superego becomes your inner judge, the punisher, the one who whispers, "You're not good enough," even when you've done nothing wrong. It is shaped by the expectations of parents, society, religion. It doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive easily. So the self that grows out of this, your so-called personality, is not you. It is the version of you that survived, a compromise between your buried truths and the world's demands, a performance you've rehearsed for years. And now, as an adult, you wear this mask so well, you believe it is your face. But every now and then, in dreams, in breakdowns, in moments of emotional chaos, the mask slips, and the child underneath screams. You are not only shaped by your past, you are possessed by it. And until you descend into that inner world, until you face the child and the shadows you left behind, you will never be free. What happens when you sleep? Your body goes still, the world goes quiet, but inside your mind, something wakes up. It speaks in symbols, it rearranges time, it resurrects the dead, it shows you desires you won't admit and fears you try to forget. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. They are not nonsense, they are not random, they are messages, coded messages from the parts of you you do not know. And if you pay attention, they can reveal the truth your waking self refuses to face. The unconscious doesn't speak with logic. It speaks with images, with metaphors, with impossible scenes. In a dream, you might fly through a burning house, chase someone you love who keeps disappearing, or arrive naked in a crowd. You wake up confused, but something lingers. That feeling, that echo, that's the unconscious still whispering. Freud believed that every dream is a wish, but not always a pleasant one. Some wishes are dark, forbidden, repressed. The mind censors these truths. disguising them in symbolic form so they can safely surface. This disguise is what Freud called dream work. The dream takes raw material from your life, memories, impressions, fears, and distorts them. It condenses multiple ideas into one symbol. It displaces important feelings onto unrelated objects. It rearranges time, mixes people, flips logic, all to smuggle the truth past your ego's defenses. Imagine your mind like a city after dark. In daylight, everything is controlled, monitored, safe. But at night, the hidden population comes alive. That is what dreams are, the secret nightlife of your soul. If you've ever had a dream that felt more real than waking life, that's no accident. Freud argued that dreams are not illusions. Your conscious identity is. Dreams are a glimpse beneath the surface, a rare moment when the unconscious leaks into awareness. But most people don't listen. We treat dreams like noise. We forget them. We dismiss them. Because to take dreams seriously means admitting that the real you, the conscious, controlled self, is not in charge. Freud would say, when you wake up from a disturbing dream, don't run from it. Ask what it's trying to show you. What desire was hiding in that symbol? What fear are you still carrying from childhood? What truth does your waking self refuse to see? Dreams are mirrors, not of the face you show to the world, but of the one you hide, even from yourself. They are the inner theater, where the id plays out its fantasies, where the ego tries to make sense, and where the superego sometimes plays judge and executioner. And that's the deeper point. Your mind is not one voice. It is a cast of characters, a psychic drama unfolding in layers. In sleep, the mask falls away. The actors step into the light. And for a brief moment, you are not the you that speaks, but the one who watches. So next time you dream, listen carefully. The voice you hear might be your own, the one you've silenced all your life. What happens when you sleep? Your body goes still, the world goes quiet, but inside your mind, something wakes up. It speaks in symbols, it rearranges time, it resurrects the dead, it shows you desires you won't admit and fears you try to forget. Freud called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. They are not nonsense, they are not random, they are messages, coded messages from the parts of you you do not know. And if you pay attention, they can reveal the truth your waking self refuses to face. The unconscious doesn't speak with logic. It speaks with images, with metaphors, with impossible scenes. In a dream, you might fly through a burning house, chase someone you love who keeps disappearing, or arrive naked in a crowd. You wake up confused, but something lingers. That feeling, that echo, that's the unconscious still whispering. Freud believed that every dream is a wish, but not always a pleasant one. Some wishes are dark, forbidden, repressed. The mind censors these truths, disguising them in symbolic form so they can safely surface. This disguise is what Freud called dream work. The dream takes raw material from your life, memories, impressions, fears, and distorts them. It condenses multiple ideas into one symbol. It displaces important feelings onto unrelated objects. It rearranges time, mixes people, flips logic, all to smuggle the truth past your ego's defenses. Imagine your mind like a city after dark. In daylight, everything is controlled, monitored, safe. But at night, the hidden population comes alive. That is what dreams are, the secret nightlife of your soul. If you've ever had a dream that felt more real than waking life, that's no accident. Freud argued that dreams are not illusions. Your conscious identity is. Dreams are a glimpse beneath the surface, a rare moment when the unconscious leaks into awareness. But most people don't listen. We treat dreams like noise. We forget them. We dismiss them. Because to take dreams seriously means admitting that the real you, the conscious, controlled self, is not in charge. Freud would say, when you wake up from a disturbing dream, don't run from it. Ask what it's trying to show you. What desire was hiding in that symbol? What fear are you still carrying from childhood? What truth does your waking self refuse to see? Dreams are mirrors, not of the face you show to the world, but of the one you hide, even from yourself. They are the inner theater, where the id plays out its fantasies, where the ego tries to make sense, and where the superego sometimes plays judge and executioner. And that's the deeper point. Your mind is not one voice. It is a cast of characters, a psychic drama unfolding in layers. In sleep, the mask falls away. The actors step into the light. And for a brief moment, you are not the you that speaks, but the one who watches. So next time you dream, listen carefully. The voice you hear might be your own, the one you've silenced all your life. What if you are not one mind but three? What if your sense of self is not a single voice, but a battlefield of instincts, compromises, and judgments? Freud believed exactly that. And in his model, the mind is not a mirror, it is a war zone. This is the fifth layer of the illusion, that the self is a unified thing. In truth, Freud saw the psyche as divided. At its core are three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego, each with its own voice, its own desires, and its own vision of reality. The id is ancient. It is the primal beast in your mind. It does not think, it wants. It craves pleasure. It avoids pain. It is blind, impulsive, and timeless. The id is where your deepest drives live: hunger, lust, rage, pleasure. It knows no morality. It knows only now. The superego is its opposite. It is not a creature of desire, but of judgment. It is the internalized voice of parents, teachers, society. It says, you must be good, you must be better, you must not fail. It punishes you with guilt. It lashes you with shame. It wears the mask of morality, but often becomes cruelty in disguise, and caught between them is the ego, the fragile mediator. The ego is the you that tries to function in reality. It negotiates between what the id wants, what the superego forbids, and what the world allows. It makes compromises, it wears masks, it builds identities that look coherent, even if they are held together by fear and lies. This is your psychic reality, a tug of war between urge and control. When you lash out and regret it later, that's the id breaking through the ego. When you feel ashamed for something harmless, that's the superego imposing its impossible standard. When you overthink every move, trying to please everyone while suppressing your true feelings, that's the ego struggling to survive. Freud's model isn't about demons and angels, it's about the structure of inner conflict. The truth is that there is no true you among these three. You are the product of their tension, the temporary agreement between chaos, conscience, and compromise. Most people think they are their ego, the rational planner, the decision maker, but Freud would say, that part of you is only a thin layer. The id is older, stronger, more persistent, and the superego is relentless. The ego is just trying not to collapse under pressure. This explains why we contradict ourselves, why we act against our own interests, why we want something one moment and reject it the next. You are not confused, you are divided. There is no one voice that defines you. There are many, and they do not always agree. To understand yourself, then, is not to find one truth, but to see the conflict clearly, to listen to the screams of the id, the judgments of the superego, and the trembling of the ego in the middle, to stop pretending you are whole and start exploring the fragments. And maybe, just maybe, in that space between voices, you will find a different kind of self. Not one made of illusions, but one that can hear the chaos and not run from it. You don't just lie to others, you lie to yourself. Not because you're weak, but because your mind is designed to protect you, even from truth. Freud called these self-deceptions defense mechanisms. They are not flaws, they are shields, psychological armor built by your ego to survive the war between the id and the superego. This is the sixth illusion, the illusion of self-honesty. We like to think we see ourselves clearly, but what we see is what we are allowed to see. The rest is hidden, pushed underground by the ego to avoid inner collapse. Consider repression, the cornerstone of all defenses. When a thought or memory is too painful, the ego locks it in the basement of the unconscious. You forget it, but it does not forget you. Repressed material seeps out in dreams, in slips of the tongue, in sudden mood shifts. The more you repress, the more you become a stranger to yourself. Then there is projection. This is when you take something unacceptable in yourself, anger, envy, lust, and see it in others instead. I'm not jealous, they are. I'm not angry, they're attacking me. Projection lets you preserve your self-image by outsourcing your shadow. Displacement is when you redirect emotion from its true target to something safer. You can't yell at your boss, so you yell at your spouse. You can't express desire for someone forbidden, so you become obsessed with something trivial. It's a detour, but the feeling always leaks. Rationalization is the voice that explains your actions in ways that sound logical, but aren't true. You didn't skip that meeting because you were scared. You say it was pointless. You didn't break up because you're emotionally closed. You say they weren't the one. Rationalization protects the ego from shame by rewriting the story. Then comes reaction formation, the strangest mask. Here, the ego deals with unacceptable impulses by expressing the opposite. The person who loudly preaches purity may be hiding forbidden desires. The one who acts overly kind may be seething with resentment. The more extreme the mask, the deeper the denial. And of course, denial, the most direct of all. It says this isn't happening. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong. Denial refuses to let painful reality enter awareness. But reality doesn't care whether you believe in it. What is denied in thought often returns in symptoms: anxiety, depression, addiction. These mechanisms are not evil. They are necessary. Without them, the psyche would shatter. The child who is unloved must believe they are bad, not that their parents are incapable. The adult who feels powerless must pretend to be in control, or else collapse. The masks keep us functioning until they no longer fit. But if you wear a mask long enough, you forget there's a face underneath. You believe the lie. You call the defense personality. You build a life on a structure meant only to survive a wound. Freud's point is not to shame you for your defenses, but to make you curious. Why do I act this way? What am I avoiding? What truth am I not ready to feel? Until you ask those questions, the illusion of self remains intact. You are not your mask. You are what's behind it, waiting to be seen. You think you are making choices. You think you are an adult, rational, independent, free. But Freud would ask, who taught you to want what you want? Who planted your fears? Who shaped your idea of love, punishment, guilt, and pleasure? The answer for Freud is simple: childhood. Not just as a time of innocence, but as the blueprint of your entire psychological architecture. Your adult self is not new. It is a remodeled version of your earliest attachments, traumas, and desires. This is the seventh illusion. The belief that we are free from the past. In truth, your present is haunted, not by ghosts, but by younger versions of yourself, still locked in emotional time. Freud believed the psyche is formed during the earliest stages of development through what he called psychosexual stages: oral, anal, phallic, latent, and genital. These aren't just about sex. They're about how pleasure, power, and identity are experienced and interrupted during key moments of growth. Take the oral stage. This is where trust is learned. A child fed with love learns the world is safe. A child fed with neglect learns the world abandons, and that belief doesn't stay in the crib. It shapes every future relationship. The adult who craves constant reassurance may still be that infant, still hungry for what was missing. Then comes the anal stage, the struggle between control and chaos. The toddler learns to assert independence through control over their body. But if that stage is handled with shame or force, the child may grow into an adult obsessed with order, or on the contrary, one who rebels against all rules. Either way, the past is still alive. The phallic stage is where Freud introduced the controversial idea of the Oedipus complex, the child's unconscious desire for the opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same-sex parent. Whether literal or symbolic, the core idea remains. Identity is formed not just through love, but through conflict, jealousy, and loss. During the latent period, the psyche reorganizes, represses earlier desires, and prepares for society. Then, in the genital stage, mature sexuality emerges, if all goes well. But rarely does it go perfectly, and what's left unfinished returns later as neurosis, confusion, or obsession. To Freud, your adult relationships are not new stories, they are reenactments. The person you fall for may resemble the parent you craved approval from. The boss who intimidates you may echo the father who was never satisfied. You think you're reacting to the present, but you're actually reliving the past. This isn't just about blame. Freud wasn't interested in making parents villains. He was interested in how the child, with limited understanding, interprets the world, creates survival strategies, and carries them forward, often unchanged, into adulthood. So ask yourself, what do I believe about love? And where did I learn it? What do I fear most? And whose voice does that fear sound like? What part of me still feels like a scared child wearing an adult mask? You are not the age you say you are. Part of you is still 5, still waiting to be seen. And unless you go back to that version of yourself, not to judge but to understand, the past will keep writing your future. Freud's truth is painful. You are not free until you face what shaped you. And freedom is not forgetting. It is remembering and choosing something new. You think the past is over, that what happened is finished, buried, forgotten. But Freud warned, what is repressed is never dead. It waits, not in memory, but in the body, in your patterns, in your fears. It returns. not as history, but as behavior. This is the ninth illusion, the belief that what you've buried stays buried. Freud introduced a haunting idea, the return of the repressed. When thoughts, memories, or desires are too painful or unacceptable, your psyche pushes them into the unconscious. You forget, but your body remembers, your dreams remember, your habits remember. The trauma you didn't process becomes a lens through which you see the world. A person who was abandoned may become clingy or incapable of intimacy. A child who was punished for anger may grow into an adult who's endlessly nice until they explode. Repression isn't healing, it's postponement. You don't erase the wound, you seal it under pressure. And what is sealed leaks. Symptoms become your unconscious speaking through code. Panic attacks with no obvious cause, chronic guilt, random tears, or sudden rage that appears out of proportion. These are messages, not malfunctions. Freud saw this in neuroses, but it extends to all of us. The past is never neutral. It builds a blueprint, and when the original pain is unprocessed, you repeat it in disguise. This is the repetition compulsion, the tendency to recreate the same emotional scenario over and over in the hope of rewriting the ending. You don't just choose your partners, your jobs, your reactions. Often they are reenactments, unconscious rituals meant to resolve what was left undone. But without awareness, you don't resolve the past. You relive it. Imagine a child who felt unseen by a parent. As an adult, they may choose partners who are emotionally unavailable. Not out of logic, but because something inside is trying to win the old battle. If I can make this person love me, it means I was worthy all along. But that logic is flawed, because the child is still in charge. And unless you bring that younger self into awareness, they will continue to run your life. From the dark, Freud did not believe this was hopeless. Quite the opposite. He believed that by making the unconscious conscious, we could be free. That was the goal of psychoanalysis, not to blame the past, but to understand how it shapes the present. The key is insight, to become curious, not ashamed. What emotion do I fear the most? Where have I felt this pattern before? What is this anxiety trying to protect me from? When you ask with honesty or without judgment, you begin to untangle the knot. This is not easy. The ego resists. Defense mechanisms will fight back. But every symptom, every emotional overreaction is an invitation to look deeper, to sit with the discomfort. And in that discomfort, you find your truth. Freud believed the mind is layered, and healing means descending through those layers. The top is noise. The bottom is you, not the you invented to survive, but the one buried beneath survival. You are not doomed to your past, but you are shaped by it until you face it. Only then can the cycle break. Only then can choice become real. Your freedom is not in forgetting. Your freedom is in remembering, and deciding who you want to be next. You walk through the world with a name, a voice, a personality. You have memories, preferences, opinions. But Freud asks, beneath all that, who are you really? And the answer might disturb you. You don't know. This is the final illusion. The belief that the self is one, solid, and stable. It is not. What you call I is not a single voice, but a negotiation of many voices. Ego, ident, superego, child, adult, shadow, mask. You were not born whole. You were born raw and shaped by parents, by language, by culture, by wounds. The identity you wear is not pure. It's a survival strategy, an adaptation to what you thought the world demanded from you. Freud saw the human as a divided being, pulled between desire and morality, chaos and order, past and future. The mind is not a mirror of reality, it is a battlefield, and the self is the outcome of that inner war. You think you are one, but you are many. You say I, but it is the ego that speaks. The ego wears the mask. The ego edits. It hides what it fears, fakes what it needs, and negotiates with the world to keep you safe. Beneath the ego is the id, the chaos of appetite and instinct. It doesn't care about rules or timing or society. It wants endlessly. And behind it all stands the superego, the judge, the parent voice, the critic that whispers, not like that, not good enough. Together, these parts perform the illusion of self. But illusion is not the same as lie. Freud never said the self was false, only that it is incomplete, unconscious, and fragile. So who are you without the mask? You are the dreams you won't admit. You are the fear behind your ambition. You are the child behind your anger. You are the memory behind your love. You are the silence behind your thoughts. To know yourself is not to define yourself, but to witness, to hold space for contradiction, to accept that your mind is a mystery, not a machine. Freud believed that healing begins with awareness, not perfection. The goal is not to fix the self, but to see it more clearly, with less illusion, less denial, less fear. You are not your job. You are not your trauma. You are not your past. But you are the pattern that connects them until you choose otherwise. So ask yourself gently, who taught me to be who I am? What am I defending by being this way? And what would happen if I stopped pretending? You may not have created the original story, but you can write the next chapter. You can stop reenacting the old pain. You can stop identifying with the wound. You can face the unconscious and become conscious. That, to Freud, was the real freedom. Not the illusion of choice, but the power of awareness. Because when you finally remove the mask, you do not disappear. You begin.